Hi, John. I'm very happy to have you here online and having an interview. I think you're such a special personality who people have to know more about. So I would like to ask the first question from you that, well, me myself, I had a very special childhood myself, but I think you have your own extremely special story. And how was it for you that you went to Oxford when you were already 15? Why so early? What was your decision?
Oh, good morning, Judith. Okay, the picture you're seeing now is one of my first chess trophies. I think it must be the London Under-12 Championship, which I first won at the age of 9. And then I became interested in mathematics as well, and continued with maths and chess in parallel. And as you say, I went to Oxford University at the age of 15 because I displayed an unusual mathematical talent, and Oxford were very flexible in accepting me at this, well, quite young age, even though since then, even younger people such as Ruth Lawrence have gone to Oxford. She went when she was 12. So yeah, it was quite an experience for me to go to Oxford and play in chess tournaments and so on. As you say, a special childhood. Obviously, I was helped very much by my parents. Yeah, well, I guess we have some stories.
How were your parents supporting you in this? Was it something natural? It was somehow expected from them because you were so smart and I guess learning a lot and you had this interest. And how was it for you to handle it that you were the youngest, I guess, by far in the university?
Well, my parents had mixed feelings about it. I think that they were worried that I was going too young and that I wouldn't fit in and would be unhappy going to Oxford at such an early age. But I wanted to go because at school there wasn't much more I could do with maths. My teachers had taught me pretty much everything they could. And the next step was to go to university. And yeah, it was a slight challenge. Newspapers made quite a fuss of me for a couple of weeks. But
how did you handle that?
Yeah, I locked my door, didn't let anybody in. So that seemed the simplest solution. And you know how these things are. Newspapers get hold of something and then in a week they've completely forgotten about it. But I think that the chess actually helped me. It enabled me to meet people and to have a social life, which I might not have had if I had been only doing maths.
How were you able to manage the two together? Because you had clearly a great passion and interest for chess, but at the same time for mathematics as well. How could you manage your days and keeping your brain sharp for competitions?
Yeah, I had busy days. I mean, you know, you see stories of these athletes who have to go to the swimming pool at 5 o'clock in the morning to train before they go to work. And it's a kind of a similar thing. I did quite a lot of chess and maths for several years. Of course, you might say if I'd done one or the other, I would have been better, but maybe not, who knows. But I was happy to have two things I was keen on. Sometimes I did more maths, sometimes I did more chess. In the end, the chess kind of took over, but that was only after quite a long time.
Did you see any benefits while you were doing math that you bring from chess and vice versa, from mathematics to chess? That it supported each other in some ways, or it was very identical, different for you?
I think it can help from the psychological point of view. You know, when you play chess, you go to tournaments and some are successful and some are not so successful. And you may have painful losses at times. And at times like this, it's good to switch to something else where you're also doing quite well and to think, well, okay, yes, if the chess doesn't work out, I always have the maths, or the other way around, of course. So yes, it was a help.
So did you ever had a moment when actually you felt that your things are not going your way on the chessboard and at the same time not going so well in math? Or it was never the case, it's either or both good?
No, it was really one or the other. When I was focusing on maths exams, for example, the chess tended to go downhill a bit, or vice versa. But I don't think there was really a time when I felt that I was going to be a complete failure at both.
So I think there is no better person than you to ask that. How much do you think chess relates to math? Because of course, many people think that if you're good in math, then you have to be good in chess, which I consider that it's not much connection, but I'd like to ask it from you. You're the big expert on that.
I agree with you. I think there's not a great deal of connection directly. You know, I don't think that, for example, teaching chess is going to help your maths. But chess for kids, I think, is very helpful in other areas. It teaches people the importance of making decisions, that your decisions have consequences and you should think about them, and not to panic when you have to make a quick decision. So there are a lot of things that chess is beneficial for, but I don't think it's going to directly help your maths.
Well, then later on in your early 20s, you reached, actually, if I know it well, becoming a grandmaster and also at the same time being a doctor in math. Is that correct? And how was it for you to complete such a big milestone in your life? And how could you keep yourself motivated after that?
Yes, it was a big year for me in 1978 when I achieved the grandmaster title and got my doctorate in maths from Oxford. Well, yeah, it was a milestone for me, but you know, there are always hills to climb ahead of you, unless of course you're the world champion, in which case perhaps you should ask Magnus Carlsen how he manages to stay motivated. But even when you become a grandmaster, there's always your rating you want to improve, you want to win a tournament, you want to achieve this, you want to prove something new in mathematics. There's endless, you know, intellectually, there are always endless mountains ahead of you that you can climb or try to climb.
Well, I remember when in those years, in my teenage years, I remember late 80s, beginning of 90s, you were developing actually a special opening system together with many of your rivals from England, Spillman, I'm not sure, but Nigel Short and Mastel and maybe some others. You developed the English attack. How did that research process, or how did that was called after you partly, because you also played this special system in the Sicilian?
Yeah, it's interesting. We never worked together on the English attack, but we all started playing it around about the same time. And of course, we all paid close attention to the games played by the other two. As you say, it was mainly Chandler, Short and myself who were playing it. And Short had great success with it, even against very strong opponents. I remember he beat poor Boy Lubojevic again and again with this system. But we never worked together because sometimes you play with your compatriots, for example, in Olympiads and other team tournaments, but other times you're playing against them in national championships or national team championships, and so you don't really want to share a lot of your secrets. But I have to say that we were keeping a very close eye on what the other two were doing.
And how much do you consider yourself a theoretician? Because you're a researcher in chess, I can say. At least this is how I see it. Later on, we'll talk about deeper on the end game. But how much do you consider yourself as a person who likes theory, analysis, develop things at home? And how much in proportion you are a practical player? Because I think this is something for me, it was a very big challenge. I was definitely a practical player and I was going into the middle game, and that's where I had my focus on, which of course I paid my price pretty much. But I think this is one of the biggest issue being on the top level, how you can balance it. How could you do that?
I mean, it was different at the time in the pre-computer age. I would say that I was more weighted towards theory than most grandmasters. In particular, when I was preparing for the World Cup 1988 to 89, I spent an enormous length of time analysing the Marshall attack, even down to some endings. I mean, I played Timon in one World Cup, and we actually got to this ending which I analysed, which looked quite bad for black, but I knew that you could hold it. So he played on for ages and ages without making any progress. This was an example of very deep preparation, which turned out to be useful. So yes, I did do quite a lot of analysis on my favourite opening systems and also quite a lot of work on the endgame. Because these days you can turn on a computer, it can do what I would do in a day in 30 seconds. So to that respect, all today's grandmasters are theoreticians because they have this, magnificent electronic help. But it also balances out, because I had an advantage over some of my contemporaries by knowing more theory. But these days everybody knows theory because the computers all tell them the same thing.
And when you started to use engines with your preparation, how could you adjust to it? For example, in my case, I remember I was trying to prolong this time that I start using engines in different systems. And of course, I also burned myself in some systems such as Marsha, for example. It was quite tricky for quite some time using engines and trusting them, especially in evaluation. The moves, I think the suggested moves were pretty good, but in evaluation, it was huge mistakes, which was actually even at the Kramnik-Lake World Championship title match was shown as well. So how did you adjust to it? Did you trust from the first moment the engines, or you could stay an outsider a little bit and be very critical?
Well, to begin with, you had to stay a bit an outsider. As you say, the engines, shall we say, if you go back to the 1990s, they weren't that strong. In some tactical positions, they were clearly very useful, but in position evaluations, not so much. And also, when you had a sacrifice for long-term compensation, they would generally just not see the compensation. So to some extent, they were like a fast but fairly stupid assistant. Of course, things gradually changed, and you learn to trust it more and more now, and it's now very rare today when I switch on an engine. In some end games, still, they don't see positional draws or fortresses, but in the vast majority of positions, of course, the engine can evaluate something and you just trust it, or you tend to think, well, why on earth is it saying that? And then you have to play through a few moves to find out what the reason is.
How do you see the engines, the computers, the AI now AlphaZero, how did it transform the game? Can you recall the moment when the first engine came, then later on when it became better, then we had different kind of engines that in this kind of positions, one plays better, gives better suggestions. In other type of situations, the other engine is better. Of course, by now the players are, there's no way that they are not running it practically 24/7. How did it transform? Can you recall it, that what were the critical stages of the computer and AI to involve and being part of the game?
Well, it was a gradual process. I mean, at one time, people just laugh at computer chess because they were so weak, and they had these computer tournaments with horrible blunders and ridiculous bugs in the programs. But gradually the laughing got less and less. And when you heard a grandmaster, I must tell you this story. Ivan Sokolov, I went to Vaikantsay one year. Ivan Sokolov was playing, and he almost won this rook and pawn ending. And afterwards, he asked me, did you see a win? I said, yeah, it looked like it should be a win, but I didn't quite see it. And then a couple of hours later, he came to me and he said, yeah, I asked my phone and it told me how to win. And then I thought, yeah, that's when your phone tells someone like Ivan Sokolov something he missed. Yeah, computers have arrived.
Well, anyway, you were a great player, and you were in top 10. I think you were playing with the top level players, and maybe math was a little bit behind in some years because you became a professional player. But also you started to write books. You're an author of 40 plus books, right? Where you were part of being an author, or you wrote it yourself. And how all this started for you? How did you get the passion for doing that?
Well, I suppose it's the academic background, where academics publish stuff. It's part of the thing they do. And I think my first book was The Pits for the Tournament Player from, I think, 1981. And yeah, I wrote occasionally books on openings mainly to begin with. occasionally other things. But then when I started to become rather old for regular tournament play, the writing turned out to be quite useful. I started my own publishing company with two friends, Murray Chandler and Graham Burgess, and since then we've published over 200 chess books. So yeah, one career has really merged into another.
Yeah, your life somehow it seems to expand. You do more and more serious things. Let me show you a picture from 91 when, well, we played in many different occasions together. We met and it was always a pleasure over the board or at breakfast. But this special event was Vienna 91. And after that, you came to our home, you joined us on the car ride, and here we see the three of us. I'm playing a blitz with you, and I have great memories from those times. And while we were going in the car, you were telling a lot about your next book coming out, which was the Endgame book called The Secrets of Rook Endgames, right?
Yeah.
And you also gave us a very special puzzle, which we are going to see shortly. I also showed the study. You did not give this to us exactly, because I remember that you gave something where the pawn was on c2, and then you said you put it in an envelope, and you told us that after you leave, only then should we open the envelope and think about it. I think you had an idea that probably we were very nervous and frustrated seeing this kind of position. And actually, this is a reciprocal Zugzwang, which is in those times, practically nearly 30 years ago, it was something that you go to the moon, right? I mean, how is it possible? It's either a draw or a win, but it's unbelievable that when the pawn is on d2, it can be a Zugzwang position. So can you tell me about it? That because you were extremely enthusiastic about it, you were like in a flow and talking about this journey you had, and actually 2 years later, you even gave me a dedicated copy. I still have it, your book. And of course, it seems to be that this is the first book of no mistakes regarding in chess moves. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's probably correct. At the time, I was really, well, I still am enthusiastic about these endgame databases, or table bases as they call them these days. Ken Thompson, who is a famous name in the computing world, had developed the first 5-man endgame databases, and he put them on CDs. I had access to them, and I was absolutely amazed at the incredible discoveries that came from looking at the positions. All these reciprocal Zugzwangs and positions where you've had absolutely unbelievable wins just with 5 pieces. And it was just stunning, eye-opening stuff. Of course, now we have, since then, 6-man and now 7-man table bases, and the amount of information out there is absolutely huge. But I still remember the thrill I had the first time I had this oracle which could tell me definitely the result of a particular class of chess positions. I went on to do 2 other books dealing with pawnless endings and minor piece endings in a similar vein, and they were, well, the first one was certainly rather controversial at the time. Some grandmasters, like Kurt Hansen springs to mind, didn't like the idea that there was this oracle which could tell you definitely this is a win, this is a draw, not white is better or white is slightly better, but this is the result. And he thought that that was something that lessened chess. I didn't really agree. Of course, now these table bases are standard tools for all kinds of chess research and analysis, and they've just become accepted, as so many things do eventually. But still, the thrill of doing it for the first time was something that will always stay with me.
Yeah, it still amazes me that practically when we talk about 5, 6, 7 pieces and games, we can just go on the database or look at some of your books and we know the pure answer. I think, this was kind of a frightening moment for chess players that it's a fact.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking that from your description of my enthusiasm, I do remember being totally captivated by this, and I would spend hours and hours just playing with these databases, not for any particular purpose to write something or whatever, but just because it was so much fun.
Yeah, it is when you're very analytical and you can appreciate all these details and small things, which I can do as well. So probably in a later time when I'm not so busy, I will get back to studies and games like this. And you have another passion, actually. I don't know exactly when it started in your career, but you became solving champion. Actually, you were three-time world champion in solving, and if I know it correctly, you were 10 times national champion.
Yes, that's right.
Is that correct? So
Yeah.
how did this come to you, and what does it give to you? What does it make you feel like to be a solving world champion? But also, what is the process of it? Why is it so engaging?
Well, chess players tend to be competitive by nature, and this is a form of chess competition, which for me has the huge benefit that it doesn't involve any opening preparation. So when you get older and you find it difficult to remember this or that opening variation, particularly if you don't play very much, then this is a good way to do some chess. It's quite fun. You go to these solving competitions, well, at least pre-pandemic, you go to European or world or national or solving championships and test yourself against the best solvers in the world. As you say, I was 3 times world champion. I am in fact currently British solving champion, and in last year's world championship I finished a very narrow second to the Polish winner of the event. So I'm still solving at a very high level, which I don't think I could do anymore at over the board chess. Unfortunately, advancing years do catch up with you at some point. So it's nice to have an activity where I can still perform very well and which I enjoy and which is still a challenge for me.
Well, I love studies and compositions myself. I made a few only, but I'd like to share with the audience the one you choose. You told me that this is your favorite study. I must say that I cut it a little bit because it was too complex by itself. So as I would want the audience to enjoy it and understand it, that's why we are starting it from the middle of the study here. And when you sent this to me, I was really amazed. I think I saw something very similar or this one before, but it was cheered me up that it's a lot of fun. So in this position, black wants to go knight g3 check out of the corner and then queen the pawn. This is why white goes g4. Make space for the king on g2. Knight g3 check. King g2, and black would or can think that after h1 it would be a draw. But it's not a draw because there is a very fantastic, amazing, unexpected move, which these are the moves I think which captivates us to love studies. I think that things are happening which is not expected and is very unusual. What is it for you that that engages you and gives you great pleasure while solving problems?
Yeah, I think it's the fact that you see things that don't normally occur in over the board play. I mean, obviously, the composer has constructed them that way, but it's just sometimes incredible that, here, for example, I've shown this study to lots of strong players and they just automatically take the queen off. I mean, as you say, there are several moves before the start of what we're showing here. They just automatically take the queen off. They don't consider another move. Your opponent promotes the pawn, you take it off. It's such an automatic thing. But in this case, it's not the best move, and that's very, very surprising. Yes, they take the knight instead, and amazingly, the queen seems very free to move in 3 different directions, but wherever it goes, it gets lost. Either, as we're seeing here, with a skewer, or with a discovered attack, or of course, if the queen takes the rook with a knight fork. So there you get all these kind of standard tactical elements, skewers, discovered attacks, forks, all combined in one rather neat package.
Yeah, this is amazing when in a composition might be few pieces or more pieces, but somehow everything has to stand perfectly, exactly on that square out of the 64. And in this position, we saw that the 64 square is not enough for the queen in this specific study. So yeah, this gives me also a lot of joy. I sometimes have the time and I bump into on social media on the different compositions, and then it keeps me during the day in my head. So it's a lot of fun, I also think. I'd like to ask you about your son. This picture probably was taken quite a few years ago, as your son is already at university. Is he playing chess, and how much is he going into your footsteps by any means?
He does play chess. I hope he won't be offended if I say that he's not going to be a grandmaster. But he plays occasionally. His main interest is in video games, where apparently he's quite good. And it's quite interesting because they have live broadcasts for these video games with commentary. And I sometimes wonder, I don't understand a single thing that's going on. And I don't even understand the commentary. And it must be like somebody watching a live chess broadcast who doesn't know how to play chess. It's utterly incomprehensible. So yeah, he plays a little bit of chess. He's studying maths and computer science at Exeter University. So yeah, following me a little bit, but only a little bit. He's got his own stuff, which is beyond me, and I'm happy that he has his own things in addition to perhaps carrying on a little bit with the maths that I studied.
Well, I think you had a very fascinating journey in your career, being a professional chess player in math. I can say that you're a researcher. You did a great contribution to the game of development. And my foundation, we have for the third year already that we give out and we acknowledge the great performances and contributions what those people do in order to promote chess, and scientifically or art or sport or educational way they do their excellent job. So we have the Goodwill Ambassador Awards, and I'd like you to accept the Goodwill Ambassador of Science in Chess for you. And apart from the diploma, we are going to send you this little trophy as a little memory from that. And I would like to say thank you very much for being here and that you shared your thoughts regarding how scientifically you developed your books, of different type of also end games, but also in theory. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Judith. It's an honour to receive this Goodwill Ambassador Award, and I see there's your famous signature there on the certificate. Yeah, it's been a great pleasure talking to you, and thank you for inviting me along.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit what you're working on right now? Are you doing some more research?
Well, right now I've just finished my latest book, the Chess Endgame Exercise book. So right now I'm taking a bit of a break. I'm enjoying the excellent weather we're having here right now, and just going out and going for walks, and yeah, taking a small break, but I'm sure I'll be back with some more research in the near future.
Well, anyway, congratulations also with your latest books, and I can only advise to our audience that if they want to read good books and entertaining and great knowledge, it's definitely your books which they have to have on the shelves. And also you have it in digitally, right? So yeah, by now you grow up into that you have an application.
Yes, we have our own app, Gambit Chess Studio, which enables you to play over all the moves in the book on your phone or tablet. So that's, yeah, I've embraced some new technology.
So I wish you all the best, great days and work. And I wish to the audience to look into deeper your activities and your books and applications. Thanks very much, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Judith.